Hello everybody, I'm Don Brennan. Welcome to Men's Viewpoint.
And I'm Corey Sabin. Men's Viewpoint is a show about men's issues and how we handle them, because after all, we're men. So sometimes we're not the brightest creatures, but we do need help in working through these problems. Right, Donnie?
That's right, Corey, and we're better to go to talk about men's issues than Pete Rose's Ballpark Cafe here in Boynton Beach, Florida, a sports bar where we feel most comfortable. Today, Carrie's our lovely waitress. She's going to be helping us out. Say hello to everybody, Carrie.
You know, one of the first issues that concerns me is buying a used car. I mean, I've had like 8 cars in the last 2 years. I never figure out where to buy a car, what to do, so I need help.
Well, we sent our roving reporter Jessica out in the field to see what other guys feel about buying a used car.
We're getting guys' opinions on used cars. Where do you look when you're buying a used car?
Today I'm at a car lot, but I like to keep my options open. I mean, I'm not too skeptical about cars, but I like to look in papers, newspapers, trades, internet, stuff like that.
Okay, and what do you look for when you're buying a used car?
Basically, the price and if it looks good. I mean, if the price is right, you know, tires are good, it'll work for me, I'll take it.
How do you know if it's not a lemon?
Well, I'm pretty good with cars. I mean, I don't generally have
You
a
just
problem.
have that, you just know.
Yeah, you can look at a car. I mean, you get in it and you drive it and it feels good. You just know.
You just know. Guys know it all. Back to you, Corey.
All right, cars and Jessica. I don't think there's a better combination than that.
I think a lot of guys would like to kick her tires, Corey.
I'll tell you, I'm one of them. Well, Don, we're in the bays right now, and we're going to find out a little bit more about buying a used car, but when you're in the bays, you got to put on the glasses. Want to be safe.
Corey, it's not so easy as Jessica found out. A lot of guys think they know, but it's not so easy. There are a lot of things to look at when you're buying a used car, and we brought in George Brady from Pep Boys to help us out and find out what to look for when you buy a used car.
Let's go meet him.
How you doing, George?
Welcome to Pep Boys, guys.
Hey, George, how you doing?
Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having us.
I'll tell you what, I'm one of those guys that's looking to buy a used car. I don't want to get duped. What do I need to know?
Well, first of all, I think the main thing is you want to look at the car and make sure that it's the car that you want. Also, I think you need to have an independent evaluation of the car done, and that would be by a qualified individual such as Pep Boys to tell you if there's anything wrong with the vehicle.
Well, George, there's a lot of things to look for when you're buying a used car, but what are the most important things that you would focus on?
We at Pep Boys have a 200-point certification or evaluation program that we actually look at the car mechanically and cosmetically to make sure that everything's intact.
What about the inside, George? Do you check the inside during this inspection?
We actually do, and if you look in here, we'll check the inside for mildew, make sure the carpets aren't wet underneath. Maybe there's maybe a flood inside. We'll check the lights, we'll check the horn, we'll check the seats, power seats, radio, and that type of stuff. Make sure that works.
Well, can we take a look under the hood and
Absolutely.
show us what you look for there?
Let's talk about that. When we do the underhood inspection, we actually check for leaking hoses, we check for cracked or frayed wires, we check for battery corrosion, we check the air filters, we check the radiator, pressure test it, we do an alternator and a starter, battery test. We also check some of the air conditioning parts.
How about previous accidents? How do you know if it's been in an accident? How do you tell? What do you do to show?
I'll tell you what we can do. Robbie, would you raise the truck, please? What we do is we actually come around, and as we check the body panels, we look for dents, we look for repaints, we look for places where it's been replaced. Underneath all the splash pans, usually if it's been in an accident, you'll see dents there, maybe some of the brackets that hold the bumpers on and those type of things. So that's what we really look for in the truck. We take a look at the brakes, we take a look at the rotors, control arms, bushings, we look at the hoses, we make sure there's no leaks. We look at fuel tanks, fuel hoses, make sure there's no leaks there, very dangerous. We check the engine underneath and we check the transmission to see if there's any visible leaks there. Also the shocks and the struts.
And then you take it out like this?
Actually, we put the wheel back on first.
Probably works better.
It works a lot better. And we take it for a road test. And during that road test, we want to make sure that it cold starts okay. We want to make sure that we have an acceleration test. We want to make sure that everything inside is working. We want to make sure all the flashers are working and those type of things. We want to check the transmission for slippage. If it's a standard shift, we want to make sure that there's no clutch noise in there. We also want to make sure that there's no wind noise in the car. Maybe there's some body panels loose or something where there's wind coming in. And certainly we want to do a brake test.
And now how about when all is said and done, you talk to the prospective buyer, say, look, we road tested, we looked under the hood, it's not worth the money that they want to pay for.
Well, actually what we do is we give a 4-page evaluation of the vehicle. And it either says the vehicle's in good shape, or it says that there are some deficiencies and we need to be corrected prior to all this information. We also have, after everything's completed, we have a certification that the driver can purchase for his vehicle for the next 2 years.
George, thanks a lot. I learned a lot today.
Thanks for coming in, guys. We appreciate having you
A lot
here.
of fun. Thanks a lot. Stay tuned for more Men's Viewpoint, but first, George, can we keep the glasses?
Absolutely.
Love it, man. You look great. We're in. You are a stud. Welcome back to Men's Viewpoint.
Up next is an issue that's a little bit more concerning. It has to do with snoring. And Donnie, this is one you definitely need to pay attention
Why?
to. Man, we've been spending a few nights on the road. In the hotel, I can hear you snoring through the wall.
That's totally untrue. I do not snore, I assure you.
And that's the problem right there. It's always worse for the other person. So, once again, we sent Jessica out to find out from some women about their man snoring.
Does your husband snore at night?
Yes, he does. He's been snoring as long as I've known him, for about 6 years.
How bad is it?
It can be pretty bad. Many times he falls right back to sleep, but when his snoring wakes me up, sometimes I can't fall asleep for hours, and then I'm exhausted the next day.
So it really affects your sleep.
Yes, I toss and turn, I hear it, I roll over, I put the pillow over my head, I put headphones on, and I don't get away from it.
Does he ever wake up from himself snoring?
No. Oh, no, he sleeps fine. Yeah, that's all well and good. He gets a very nice, sleepful, peaceful sleep.
Wow, Corey, there are a big problem with snoring. I mean, a lot of guys snore.
And you're one of them. So we decided to take a little road trip up to Tampa to find out more about it.
We headed up to University Community Hospital where we got to meet the real dream team.
Well, doctor, we heard that snoring can be a big-time problem in relationships. I snore. What is it?
Now, snoring basically is some sort of vibration either in the palate or in the pharynx and the back of your throat that makes a noise and it bothers your bed partner. But it can be more significant than that, in that sometimes that's a sign or a noise that is created by a partial obstruction to the airway or a partial narrowing of the airway. And when that happens, it can disturb your sleep and it can cause problems like sleep apnea.
Now you say sleep apnea. Is all snoring sleep apnea? And what is sleep apnea exactly?
Well, not everybody who snores has sleep apnea. Some people just are pretty noisy, but it probably is at least an early stage of it or an early form of fruit or an early part of it in that the airway is narrowing down. But in any event, sleep apnea means that there's actually a partial narrowing of the airway sufficient enough to cause some problem. Most of the times that problem is related either to a disturbance of the sleep. Every time the airway narrows down, the patient partially arouses and partially awakens. Even though they're not awake, they sit in bed, they look like they're sleeping, but it disturbs their sleep so frequently through the night that the next morning they wake up, they're tired. If it gets even more severe than that, it can actually block the airflow down into the lungs and cause your oxygen level to fall, which can cause other major problems like high blood pressure. If they do have sleep apnea, we may ask them to use a CPAP mask, which is a little device you wear around your nose that straps around your head, which is a little tight and a little annoying when you first put it on. But it is used to try and reverse this process by putting an air pressure through the nose to the back of your throat. If your airway's collapsing in, we can put an air pressure from the inside to push out to stop the airway from collapsing, and then try and reverse that process and see if we can make it better from that using a CPAP.
Now, doctor, I think most people who know anything about sleep apnea know about the mask, and that seems to have been around for a while. Are there other things now that have been innovated?
Yeah, the CPAP is the primary way that we would treat this, at least initially, with the hope that we can look at other alternatives, and particularly if the patient's overweight or deconditioned in some way, we want to get them back into better shape. But yes, there are clearly other alternatives, including surgery. There are a variety of surgical options that are open, including the UPP, and the laser procedure, and the somnoplasty procedure, which may be indicated under certain circumstances for an individual patient and can be pretty effective.
Well, the first thing that we do when we see a patient with sleep apnea is try and identify where along the upper airway the problem is. The obstruction of the upper airway that creates the sleep apnea can be anywhere along the upper airway, from the nose, palate, or the back of the tongue. And we first try and identify where that obstruction is.
Now, it seems like you're really on the ground floor, that you're just starting out, and it seems very exciting. Is there anything on the horizon that you see that can really help people out?
Well, there are several surgical techniques that have been devised for treatment of obstructive sleep apnea. The latest technique that we're very excited about is what's called somnoplasty, that involves using a radio frequency probe that's inserted into the tissues to help shrink and tighten the tissues. And that can be in any of those areas that we discussed, the nose, the palate, or the back of the tongue.
In this fast food society, many people are worried about having to spend the night in the hospital. How about this treatment?
Well, that's the nice thing about the somnoplasty technique is that it is done generally under local anesthesia in the office. There's usually very little pain involved, and the recovery time is very quick. Most people can return to work that same day or the next day.
Now with somnoplasty, it seems to be the most new and exciting, is that, so now when people walk through the door with any level of sleep apnea, they get hit right away with somnoplasty, or is it a last resort?
Well, obviously, we try and tailor the treatment to the patient's problem. In many cases, somnoplasty is actually our first treatment because it is very safe and minimally invasive, but it's not for everybody.
See, Corey, unlike our Olympic basketball team, this dream team is legit.
Yeah, they were pretty solid. I'd like to party with those guys. Hey, food's here.
Yeah, you know the way to a man's heart, Carey. Thanks a lot, I appreciate it. Now we're going to talk about something that a lot of us have a problem talking about, if you know what I'm saying.
It's a more sensitive issue.
See, Corey, now balding, that really hits home with a lot of guys, including you and I.
I'll tell you what, you got a serious issue up there. Me, I'm all right. I got a full head of hair.
Yeah, all right, you're in denial.
Anyway, we went to see an expert in the field of hair loss, Dr. Bernie Cohen. He gave us the lowdown.
Doctor, there's a lot of things out there. People say why you lose your hair. People who wear hats lose their hair, or there's no circulation up there. What is the exact reason that people lose their hair?
The single most important reason people lose their hair is genetics. Whether or not you lose your hair is determined at the moment you're conceived. Then later on there are other factors that are contributory. One, a minor one, is circulation. The other is the presence or absence of a hormone in your scalp called 5-alpha reductase.
Well, we've all seen those people that have that really bad pullover, that one strand, but you really never seem to see people bald on the sides or in the back of their head. Is that a myth, or am I just out of my mind, or what?
Well, the hair on the back and the sides of your head is programmed to grow forever. We've known that since the beginning of time. People like Michael Jordan and Telly Savalas shave their heads. But this hair is permanent and remains so until the day you die.
Doctor, I mean, if it is in fact genetic, my father at 23, 24 was already completely bald. I mean, I'm 35 now and I kind of have a half full head of hair. It's mixed up. Why is that if it's really genetic?
Well, I'm going to give you a simple answer to a fairly complicated question, but the simple answer is that the degree to which you're going to lose your hair is usually determined by the men on your mother's side of the family rather than your father's side of the family. So if you look back at your uncles and your grandfather, you can have an idea of what's in store for you down the line.
Well, I'm sure this pertains to a lot of guys. We're here for the consultation. Let's go to the next step.
Okay, why don't we step in the other room and take a look?
All right, Doc, so I jump up on your examining table. I obviously am receding a little bit, but it stopped a few years ago. So where do I go from here?
Well, first we have to determine whether or not you actually have recession. And we're going to measure the distance from here up to your hairline. And that should be no greater than 9 centimeters, and that's where you are actually, so that's good. But you do have some thinning here. This is much lower density than this, so you have typical male pattern hair loss.
Well, I'll tell you what, Doc, I've got a little bald spot in the back, and I've always heard that means I'm a great thinker. So what about someone like Don who's got it in the front?
Well, that means Don's a great lover.
Well, what if you have it in the front and the back?
That means you think you're a great lover.
In all seriousness, though, what are some of the treatments for male pattern baldness?
Actually, there are 3. There's a lotion, there's a pill which you can take, which will stop the hair loss in about 95% of people and actually grow hair in somewhere in the range of 30% of people. And then there's a procedure called hair transplantation.
Now, if I decided I want hair transplantation, would I need the Propecia and the minoxidil and that stuff also?
Well, the hair transplantation will take the hair from the back and permanently deposit it in the front where it will continue to grow, but unless you take the pill, this original hair will continue to fall. So people who do have hair transplantation almost always take Propecia to maintain what they started with.
Must do wonders for someone's self-esteem.
Well, believe it or not, I had it done myself, and I have to tell you, it was probably one of the best things I ever did.
Nice leg. Hope for you yet, my friend.